Hello, everyone. My name is Preston Dennett, and today I'd like to talk to you about a wonderful case of UFO contact involving a man by the name of Stan Hughes. After interviewing him, we've continued to stay in touch. He's become a really good friend. He's visited my home on multiple occasions. And I'd really like to share with you his amazing story of his contact with the star people. Now, Stan has worked as a teacher most of his life. He moved into school administration. He's now retired. His wife was a teacher. He's married. He's got kids. He's a really great guy. He currently lives in the upper Idaho panhandle. He's a Native American ancestry. He's part of the Blood tribe of Canada. His name in Seneca, and I don't think I'm going to be able to pronounce this right, but I'll give it a try, is Ha-Gwe-A-Dis-Sas, which means man seeking his people. He's got a very interesting case of UFO contact that I think is really important. And that's what I'm going to be talking about right now. His first sighting close up was around 1989. He was with a friend at the University of Illinois visiting the campus and was out there late at night when they both saw a very low-level saucer-shaped object scoot right overhead. It was a very interesting sighting and quite compelling, but certainly not his only one. Wasn't long later, it was really around the early 1990s that he and his family started to visit Lake Pend Oreille near their home on the upper Idaho panhandle. Lake Pend Oreille is a beautiful lake. It's Idaho's largest lake. It's a freshwater lake. It's very deep, over 1,000 feet in parts. And really beautiful. Often they go there and spend the day, and at night they would watch these, what they called nocturnal lights, UFOs. Sometimes there'd be 4 or 5, sometimes 10 or more. Sometimes none would show up, but usually there was something. And this started to become a fun family activity where they just go to the lake and watch these objects hovering, darting at right angles, scooting around. And they had a real fun time watching these things. One time in 1992, summer of 1992, they were up at the lake. They were sitting on a little bluff overlooking the lake, watching these nocturnal lights darting around, when suddenly one of them comes zooming down to almost eye level. It's very close, and Stan's little daughter, she suddenly says, "Daddy, Daddy, they're reading my mind. What should I do?" Stan turned to her and said, "Tell them I love you." At that moment, she says, in her sweet little voice, "I love you." And at that moment, this UFO flares up, bright, bright blue, scoots down a little bit, comes towards them, and flies over their heads. It was a thrilling encounter. It was so bright, it left after images on all their retinas, but was really a benevolent encounter. So that was probably one of their closest at Lake Pend Oreille. But Stan wasn't long after that. He had probably one of the most amazing encounters of his life, a face-to-face contact with one of the star people. This occurred in 1997. Stan had traveled from his home in the upper Idaho panhandle to go camping in Washington State at Thunder Mountain. It's a beautiful, very remote and natural area. He brought his dog, took his pickup, spent the night camping, saw a few of these UFOs darting around, which wasn't terribly unusual. And early the next morning, he starts to head home. He's driving his pickup along a long dirt road, which is a more direct route towards his destination. It's very remote. There were no other cars on the road, though that's not unusual. And he started to feel really strange, almost sleepy or entranced. And the feeling got so strong he actually pulled over for a second, His dog was asleep on the front seat next to him when suddenly he hears this loud whooshing noise, and this giant silver object lands on the road in front of his car. It covers the entire width of the road. It's perfectly spherical, shiny metallic silver like chrome, and stunningly beautiful. An opening appears in the front, and this man steps out. Stan described the man as being about 6 feet tall, with long, shoulder-length brown hair, dark eyes, dark skin, looked almost Middle Eastern, he said. Very handsome man. He was wearing a jumpsuit, a brown jumpsuit, and silver boots, and Stan was just struck by how handsome this man looked. And the man smiled. He stepped out of this object, walked up to the front of Stan's car, smiled, raised his hand, and just a friendly gesture. Stan was overwhelmed with emotion at this point and had this feeling of, I don't want to be here. Take me with you. He actually said this. Take me with you. Please, will you? I don't want to be here. Will you take me with you? And at that moment, the man's smile dropped. His hand fell to his side, and he got an incredibly sad look on his face, turned around, walked back into the object, which promptly took off. Stan sat there stunned for a second as this feeling of intense sadness just washed over him like water, he said. And it was a feeling which would persist for several weeks afterwards, actually. This whole experience had a very profound effect on him. His dog slept right through the whole thing. The truck was still running. He hadn't fallen asleep. So it appears to have been a fully conscious encounter, though it wasn't in a sort of a weirdly calm-like state. And he drove on. So he continued to have encounters after that. One evening, his son had not been feeling well. It was some years following this incident. His son had gone to Norway as a foreign exchange student and came back feeling depressed and was just having a real hard time with it. He sought conventional therapy, but it wasn't working. So one evening, Stan decided to go camping at Thunder Mountain again. It was an activity he enjoyed, and this nocturnal light appeared, this UFO. It was very low, and it was pulsating, and then suddenly it would come swooping down, at which point Stan would feel this feeling of dread or fear. Then it would back off, the fear would become less, and then it would pulsate and come closer and become brighter, and this wave of fear came over him again. This happened over and over again. It was there for about 20 minutes. It became clear to Stan that it was trying to warn him of something, but he couldn't figure out what it was until the next morning when he returned home and discovered that his son had been going through a crisis. So at this point, they decided to seek another form of treatment. The conventional treatment wasn't working, so they decided to try a traditional Native American ceremony. And that's what they did. They met with relatives and friends at Sullivan Lake in Washington. It's another very beautiful natural setting to do a healing ceremony. They had a medicine woman, someone that Stan knows, and she meditated on Stan's son's problem, and she said, I know what the problem is. He has a spirit attached to them. He has a spirit attached to him of a young man. Now this suddenly made sense because, as it turned out, the home that Stan's son had been staying in Norway earlier, well, the son had committed suicide only a few months before Stan's son came to stay in the same bedroom. So apparently somehow this spirit became attached to him. And following the Native American healing ceremony, suddenly the children at the camp started screaming and pointing at an apparition. And sure enough, there was the apparition of the young student who had committed suicide. He quickly disappeared. And as part of Stan's son healing, to cap it all off, he was instructed to jump into Sullivan Lake, which is icy cold, by the way. So he jumped in, and at that moment, a UFO appeared. There was a very loud humming noise. It took over the camp. Everyone became silent. The trees started shaking, and this huge, huge black disc appeared. It was covered with lights all around the perimeter, and it just slowly moved off. The people there all felt like it had come to celebrate the healing ceremony. So yeah, these are the kinds of experiences Stan has had. They've been very benevolent. He still continues to go to Lake Pend Oreille and occasionally see the lights whizzing around up there. He calls the star people the Woh-Geh, and he believes they are his ancestors, actually, or that they're related. As you know, this is actually a very popular belief among Native American peoples. He's become a real good friend. He's also a writer, by the way. He's written a number of books, including a book by the title of Medicine Seeker. There's another wonderful novel he wrote called Children of the Bluefish, about life in early America among Native Americans. Most recently, he's written a book called The Adventures of Sophia, Warrior Princess. And he has more coming. His Stan's story, I think it's an important one because it shows that UFO contact can be very positive and friendly. His story is presented in Chapter 5 of my book, Inside UFOs. And it's one of many cases of people who've had very benevolent, friendly contact, the kind you don't often hear a lot about. So thanks very much for listening, and keep having fun.